So I was gonna include this as part of my week 1 update video that I... Whoa, time out. I just noticed as I started editing this video that I had a piece of black beans stuck in my teeth, so yeah, that's another tip. If you're gonna be eating black beans, just look in the mirror after you're done. Uploaded a few days ago, but during week 1, it represented a big enough set of challenges, yet a simple enough set of solutions that I felt it deserved its own video. And so, here we are. Welcome to Get It Together, and if you're new here, this channel is just me trying to figure out how to get my life together and sharing the tips and lessons I learn along the way. And as you may have gathered from the intro, and especially if you watched this past upload, which was my week 1 update on the slow carb diet, you'll probably know clearly that this video is all about drinks. Now, going back to the very first video in this series, things to consider before even trying the slow carb diet, one of the things that I realized very early on when I was going through the 5 rules was that rule number 3, which is to not drink any calories, was going to be by a huge margin the most difficult challenge for me, just because of the sheer amount of sugary drinks that I typically consume every day. It's important to note here that thirst really is not the issue here. I drink sugary drinks out of sheer habit of taste, not sustenance. Now, prior to my commitment of going on the slow carb diet, my sugary drink started very first thing in the morning. In my coffee, I would either put a lot of sugars, I'm talking like 4 sugars with cream, or I would use these really unhealthy creamer flavored hazelnut vanilla type things, and I added a lot of it. Then throughout the rest of the day, I'd have at least 1 soda, and I'd have boba a few times a week, and at home I'd have a lot of juices, which I managed to convince myself were really, really healthy. To be honest, it was a little bit disheartening realizing how much I dislike black coffee with just cinnamon in there. Getting over that hurdle of, ugh, I don't like it. It's just so different from what I'm used to. But then I had 2 key epiphanies. The first one is realizing that when it comes to coffee, the desired net result I'm after, it's like the caffeine is what I'm after. And so if it's the caffeine I'm after, there's no reason why I can't just drink it, consciously being aware that this is primarily for the caffeine instead of trying to seek this ultimate enjoyment. The second epiphany has to do with sugary drinks. Yes, sugar has a huge part to do with it, but what I realized is that throughout my days prior to going onto the slow carb diet, I would just have all this variety of drinks and I just defaulted to sugar. Right now with the slow carb diet, if it's just water every day, it just felt really boring. And so what I was really craving was any drinks that had flavor, preferably strong flavors. What I mean here is that like a random cup of tea isn't gonna cut it. It's just not strong enough of a flavor. I need a flavor profile that's intense enough to satisfy this kind of drastic change away from a lot of sugary drinks. So without further ado, let's get into the drink options that I found worked perfectly for me to the point where I genuinely don't even think about the sugary drinks anymore. The first is ginger water or ginger tea, or I don't know, basically ginger boiled in water. It has a tremendously strong flavor, so I actually find myself having to dilute it, which works out because it just lasts longer. For people who are used to having beer, which is obviously not allowed on the slow carb diet, I found that a 1-to-1 ratio of ginger tea and carbonated water gives that fizziness of beer and a flavor profile that's just different enough from your average drink that it kind of does the trick. I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that it actually tastes like beer. This has carbonated water. But it did the job for me when I was craving a cold one after day 6 on a Friday. When it comes to ginger water, it's pretty simple. I mean, it does take a little bit of time, but I just get a piece of ginger and a carrot or potato peeler and peel all of the skin off, as much as I can anyways. And then I take a knife and I cut that ginger into really, really small minced pieces, or as small as I can get them. And then if you go to any kind of, I don't know, grocery, I think most grocery stores will have it, but there's these pouches where you can make your own tea bags, and I just put all of that ginger into a tea bag. Now, while I'm preparing that tea bag, I will have already started boiling water on the stove, and once it's ready, I just toss it into the boiling water and let it steep for a good 10 minutes. Again, I want to remind you that you can use as much or as little as you want. It really is a strong flavor, but here's a color comparison. This is what I've made on the stovetop, and so it really is strong. It's stronger than I would personally like, just straight up, and so I always find myself diluting, whether it's with hot water, cold water, or carbonated water. Remember how I said that the internet tells me that ginger tea is crazy healthy? The internet also tells me that some people like to add lemon to it. Me personally, I tried it once. I don't like it. It's just 2 really strong competing flavors, and I'm just gonna stick straight up with ginger tea. But that's just me. Speaking of lemon, lemon's one of those things that really confused me at the beginning, where it's a fruit and rule 4 is that you can't have any fruits. So I assumed that lemon was a no-go, but later on in the book and also in follow-up articles in Tim Ferriss's own blog, he states that having up to 3 tablespoons of freshly squeezed lemon juice, so not out of bottle, but freshly squeezed lemon juice is totally fine, whether it's on a salad, in water, or even when you're marinating your meat. In fact, in the book later on, Tim Ferriss writes that lemon juice can actually reduce glycemic peaks. And so after going down a further rabbit hole of research, I found that, like again, in moderation, up to 3 tablespoons of lemon juice, freshly squeezed lemon juice, at worst is neutral and at best will actually help reduce that insulin response. So what does that mean for me? If I want a stronger beverage, what I'll do is I'll squeeze a tablespoon or 2 of fresh lemon water, and I'll even add some mint, depending on my mood. Refreshing. Again, it's really interesting for me to find out that dependence on sugary drinks. Yes, I'm sure on cheat day I'm still going to go bananas with sugary drinks, but that dependence that I thought was a dependence was less so on sugar, but more so on habit of having flavors. Now, if I'm really craving something sweet and none of these other options are hitting the spot, my go-to is red bell pepper juice. So basically I just take a red bell pepper, cut it up, put it in a blender, spin it up for a few seconds, and there it is. Now I do add a bit of water into the blender, and for people who don't like pulpy drinks, this definitely isn't for you, but if you have a juicer, you can definitely just squeeze red peppers into it, and there's definitely a noticeable sweetness in it. And it is also 100% slow carb diet compliant because it's a vegetable. Now, as an absolute last ditch resort, which I haven't had to use thankfully yet, is Diet Coke. In the book, Tim Ferriss writes that you can have up to 591 milliliters of Diet Coke a day. That's like almost 2 cans or one of those like gas station bottles worth. I've just been told by the internet and the world that aspartame is the worst thing for people, so I haven't caved yet. I did buy this on day 0, the day before I started, and it's been sitting in the fridge, and though I see it every day, I'm pretty happy to say that because of these drink options, I haven't even thought twice about cracking that open. I want to revisit coffee for a brief moment here. I mean, like, yeah, I really dislike it, even with the cinnamon in there. Maybe it's because I don't have particularly good coffee. I don't kind of drip brew or anything. I just use one of those disc coffee makers, and so maybe it's because it's not the best coffee. But on page 83 of the book, Tim Ferriss writes that if you must add dairy, you can add cream. Going through further research and also in another video that Tim Ferriss put out, he mentioned that it has to be full fat cream. I have no idea what this is. I assumed full fat meant like 100%, but what I found through a lot of research finally is that anything that's 35 to 40% is considered full fat cream. I also have not caved yet, but I guess this is going to be an experiment. You guys are going to be the first. I'm going to try this, and it says 1 to 2 tablespoons, so I'm just going to use 1 tablespoon and see if it makes a big enough difference for me to actually consider enjoying it a lot more. Holy crap, that is thick. 1 tablespoon, and it looks like that. All right, let's give this a shot. No, I'm not going to be using this personally. I mean, this is a definitely personal taste. For me, I thought it was going to make a big difference because my typical coffee prior to the slow carb diet is just cream and lots of sugar, but it doesn't change the taste enough. Really, what I've identified now through this very intimate experiment that we just did together is that when it comes to coffee, I'm just used to the sugar. Regardless though, if for you personally it's the dairy that makes you enjoy coffee, I'll save the time for the research. Conclusively, when Tim Ferriss is referring to full fat or heavy cream, he's talking about any cream that has 35 to 40% MF or milk fat. To be clear, I'm still going to have coffee every morning with just cinnamon in there, but like I said really early on that it's the caffeine I'm primarily after, so for now I have no problem just sticking through it, pounding it back to get that wake up. And who knows, I might actually not only get used to it, but start to enjoy it. But for now, it's strictly for the caffeine. I am happy that I just did this experiment and that this cream didn't make a big enough difference because I feel like I've kind of committed myself to a certain level of strictness. And even though it says that it's okay in the book, and I just feel like it's a slippery slope to non-compliance. I will say though that having the Diet Coke and this in the fridge and not really touching it has been almost a source of motivation since I haven't caved yet. After all, if I'm going to be really honest with myself, a few minutes of suboptimal happiness in the morning, if the primary purpose is to wake me up, isn't a big deal at all. For anyone that is on the slow carb diet or who has done the slow carb diet, are there any drink go-tos that you guys use? I'm just a few days into week 2, which really means I have 3 more weeks to go to round out the full 30 days of this experiment. Just a reminder that I put up $100 with the risk of losing if I fail to post my breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day to an Instagram account I created @GitVlog to the highlights and stories. I'd love and appreciate if you'd be able to help keep me accountable over there. And also, if you got value out of this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.